Two countries are spending billions of dollars to not fight each other directly. One is sending weapons to a country it doesn't control. The other is bombing a country it says it wants to save. And somehow neither side will admit they are already at war. This is not a history lesson about missiles and tanks. This is a story about power, money, fear, and a map drawn badly in 1991. Because if you strip away the propaganda on both sides, something strange emerges. The math of this conflict never adds up the way either government tells you, and that gap between the official story and the real one is exactly where we are going today. Stay with me, because this gets genuinely weird before it gets clear. Let us start with the most important question nobody is really asking. Why does a war in Eastern Europe affect your gas bill in Texas? Why does a conflict in Ukraine make semiconductors more expensive in South Korea? Because this war is not really about land. It never was only about land. Russia and the United States have been circling each other like two people in a very small room. Neither wants to throw the first real punch, but neither will step back either. The stakes here are not just Ukrainian cities or Russian soldiers dying in trenches. The stakes are the entire post-World War II rulebook for how countries behave. And that rulebook, quietly, is being shredded right now, page by page. So let us go back to the beginning. Because the beginning is not February 2022. The beginning is a moment most people alive today barely remember. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and the Cold War was supposedly over. The United States was the last superpower standing, and everybody knew it. Russia inherited the ruins of an empire it could no longer afford to run. Imagine losing your job, your savings, your national identity, all in one decade. That is roughly what happened to Russia throughout the entire 1990s. Their economy shrank by nearly 40% in just a few years. Life expectancy for Russian men dropped dramatically during that chaotic transition period. Meanwhile, NATO, the military alliance built specifically to contain the Soviet Union, kept expanding. Poland joined, Hungary joined, the Czech Republic joined, then the Baltic states joined. Every time a new country joined, Moscow watched with growing fury and resentment. NATO promised verbally but never in writing that it would not expand eastward. That promise, disputed and debated to this day, became the original wound in this conflict. Vladimir Putin came to power in 1999, and he had one organizing idea above everything. Russia would never again be humiliated the way it was humiliated in the 90s. He did not hide this. He said it clearly, repeatedly, for 25 years straight. But Washington mostly heard what it wanted to hear, which was essentially almost nothing. By 2008, Putin was already sending signals that Ukraine was a red line for him. Russia invaded Georgia that year, took territory, and the world issued statements and moved on. By 2014, Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine in a move that shocked Western governments publicly. Privately, intelligence agencies had been watching this trajectory for years. So the question that matters here is, why did the West not take it more seriously? The honest answer is uncomfortable. European economies were deeply hooked on Russian energy. Germany was getting roughly 55% of its natural gas from Russia in 2021. Italy, Hungary, Austria were all running on Russian pipelines like extension cords plugged into Moscow. This is where economics and geopolitics fuse into something genuinely difficult to untangle cleanly. On February 24, 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The Kremlin called it a special military operation, which is government language for something much worse. Putin expected Kiev to fall in 3 days, according to multiple credible intelligence assessments afterward. It did not fall in 3 days, it did not fall at all. Ukraine fought back harder than almost any analyst publicly predicted in advance. Within weeks, the United States and Europe began sending weapons, money, and intelligence support. Here is where the math starts getting strange and slightly surreal. The United States has committed over $170 billion in Ukraine aid since 2022. That sounds enormous until you realize the American defense budget is roughly $900 billion annually. Ukraine aid represents roughly 19% of 1 year of Pentagon spending spread over 2 years. Russia, meanwhile, has restructured its entire economy around fighting this war and surviving sanctions. Moscow shifted production to artillery shells, drones, missiles, and anything that can be fired or flown. Russia is now producing more artillery shells per month than the entire NATO alliance combined. That sentence deserves a pause because it is genuinely alarming when you sit with it. The West has more money, but Russia has more factories currently pointed in one direction. Here is the part nobody on television really wants to explain plainly and clearly. This war is being fought with Ukrainian lives, Russian lives, and American and European money. The people making the decisions are not the people absorbing the direct physical cost of those decisions. NATO countries have sent weapons, but not troops, which is a very deliberate and calculated choice. The line is drawn at direct confrontation with Russia, because Russia has nuclear weapons, roughly 6,000 of them. That nuclear umbrella changes every single calculation in ways that do not apply to normal geopolitical conflicts. America cannot just crush Russia militarily the way it might otherwise choose to do so. Russia cannot just conquer Ukraine quickly the way it planned to, because Ukraine keeps getting resupplied constantly. So both sides are locked in a war of attrition, where time itself is the actual weapon being deployed. And time favors whoever can sustain the economic and political will to continue for longer. Russia bet that Europe would lose its nerve after one winter without Russian gas supplies. It did not. Europe scrambled, paid more, found alternatives, and kept the heat on largely. The West bet that sanctions would collapse the Russian economy within months of their imposition. That did not happen either. Russia found workarounds through China, India, Turkey, and the UAE. You have heard that Russia is losing badly, and that its military has been exposed as weak. You have also heard that Ukraine is exhausted and running out of soldiers and political support. Both things are simultaneously true, which is what makes this conflict so genuinely difficult to resolve cleanly. Russia has lost staggering amounts of equipment and an estimated 300,000 to 500,000 casualties. Ukraine has lost a generation of young men in numbers that its government does not publicly confirm regularly. The front line today is not dramatically different from where it was 18 months ago. Both sides are spending enormous resources to move it by a few kilometers in either direction. That is the quiet absurdity at the center of everything you are watching on the news. This war has already permanently reshuffled the global economic order in ways we are still mapping. Europe learned it cannot be dependent on authoritarian regimes for basic energy infrastructure and security. Russia learned that its military was not the second most powerful conventional force on Earth. China watched everything, took careful notes, and has been rethinking its own plans regarding Taiwan accordingly. The United States is discovering that funding a proxy war while managing internal political division is extremely costly. In 2024, Congress froze Ukraine aid for months because of domestic political gridlock and disagreement. That freeze sent a message to Moscow that American commitment has a political shelf life and expiration date. NATO allies scrambled to promise more because the alternative, a Russian victory, terrifies them for clear reasons. A Russian victory would mean borders can be changed by force, and that principle threatens every smaller nation. A Ukrainian victory would mean nuclear powers can be successfully challenged, which also terrifies Russia enormously. Neither side can fully afford to win, and neither side can fully afford to admit that reality publicly. So here is where we land after all of that, and it is not a comfortable place. This is not a war with a clean ending anywhere visible on the current horizon. It is a war that the world built the conditions for over 30 years of ignored warnings. It is being sustained by money, ideology, fear of nuclear escalation, and pure national stubbornness on all sides. The question nobody in power has answered honestly and publicly is this one simple thing. What does the end actually look like, and who decides when everyone has paid enough? Because right now that answer depends entirely on who you ask and which map you are looking at.